Well, let's get into it. We're going to talk about how we think these 2020 rookie drafts are going to kind of shake up and look like where we think these, not necessarily specific guys, but tiers of players, tiers of positions are going to go. And I know we were talking about in the last video how we think there are going to be some great wide receivers at the end of the first round, but we're just going to kind of go through. We're going to do a super flex, not mock draft, but super flex overall outlook, just because honestly, one QB, you're going to be taking running back, wide receiver, running back, wide receiver. It doesn't really matter. So we're going to go super flex. And Scott, why don't you start us off what we think we're going to be looking at the very top of the round?
Yeah, so like Mason said, we're going to start with a super flex template and just kind of go through, we're going to go back and forth, or we're just going to discuss tiers. We're not going to really talk as much about players specifically. So I'm going to kind of give, my breakdown of how I'm viewing super flex drafts right now. Like if I had to create tiers, like where the breaks would be, like approximately where the tiers would be for me. And then also what I'm looking for going forward to determine, where those tier breaks might be as well. So we'll start. Mason, you agree that it's probably Joe Burrow 101 in super flex leagues?
I think 100% it's Joe Burrow unless like Swift goes to KC.
Okay. So regardless of whether it's Joe Burrow going 101 or the running back one going 101, clearly there's going to be a quarterback that goes in the top couple picks. And then would you say that if Tua's medical stuff checks out and he has top 7, top 5 draft capital, that he is clearly in the top tier of quarterbacks as well?
Okay, so I think at least I could be wrong here. Obviously I'm just a 21-year-old kid, but I think that if Tua's medicals check out, how we're going to know that happens is he's taking number 2 overall in the draft, number 2 or 3. I mean, I can see his medicals checking out and Chase Young still going ahead of him, but he's not going to fall to the Dolphins at 5 if all the QB needy teams bring him in for a workout and everything's fine. So I honestly see him. I think the NFL draft is going to tell a lot with him.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think even if he gets taken at 4, if there's movement from those teams at 5, 6, 7, you have Miami, you have the Chargers, you have Carolina, 3 teams clearly with the potential to address the quarterback position. If there's movement by those 3 teams, if there's some jockeying, if there's some rumors about them trading up to draft a quarterback, I think that's when it's like they're hearing okay things about Tua, comfortable enough to draft him. I'm fine. I'm not worried about, is he going to be able to play till he's 38 or 36? I'm not necessarily caring about that. So I guess for me, he's in my top tier of quarterbacks. Probably not ahead of Burrow just because, Burrow's profile is going to be pretty rock solid. Whether you think Tua is better or not, it's hard to pass up on a likely 101 quarterback prospect.
Yeah.
But clearly, I think they're in the top 2. And then I think there's going to be, if Justin Herbert goes in the top 7, I think he enters into that top half of the first round in Superflex drafts too. If he goes top 7, top 6, to the Chargers or to Carolina, I see a lot of mock drafts that have him going either 6 or 7. I think that would enter him into that top 6 or so in Superflex leagues as well. So let's just consider 3 quarterbacks I think are going to be locked in to the first round of the Superflex draft. Do you agree?
Oh, definitely. Especially if Herbert goes that high.
Okay. So quarterbacks, we already have 3. And so you guys keep in track. That's 3 quarterbacks in the first round. And then when you go to the running backs, I think that right now there's a very clear top 5 in running backs. You have Swift, Taylor, and Dobbins as most people's top 3. But then you have Cam Akers and Clyde Edwards-Helaire both kind of jumping into that top 5 to make it a pretty clear top 5 tier at running back. I think barring an injury or barring a draft capital fall that crushes any of those guys, I'm fairly certain all 5 of those guys are going to be first round picks in super flex leagues, just based on what we talked about in the prior video, that running backs are going to be starved. People want running backs. People need running backs. People have been banking on this class to give them starting running backs. I think those top 5 are clearly going to be head and shoulders above everybody else. You agree with that?
Oh, definitely. And that's because there's no depth to this class really past those top 5, I think it's going to push them up higher than they should go.
Yeah, I agree. I can see 5 of the top 7 picks in Superflex leagues literally being running backs, where those guys are going ahead of the top receivers just based on scarcity. So that's 8 picks right there. That's 3 quarterbacks and 5 running backs. Now, the receivers are difficult because a lot of times it's league dependent. A point per carry league, you may not want to take a receiver in the top 5. But there's going to be leagues where, Judy and CD Lamb are most people's clear top 2. And I see, barring something unforeseen happening, I'm pretty comfortable putting them both in the first round of a Superflex draft as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I think I don't even know what could happen that would put them outside the first round. I think that at least everything I've seen, that they're just in a tier of their own when it comes to the wide receivers.
Yeah, and I'm looking at a culmination of some mock drafts where essentially they put all the mock drafts that are ongoing together. And both of those guys are usually averaged in the top 16. So we're talking about the top half of the first round.
And that's NFL draft.
Draft capital. Yeah, in the NFL draft. So if they get that draft capital and they're already being seen in this first round tier, they're a lock to be, first round Superflex picks. So that's 10 picks. Right there, we're talking about 10 deep. So if you're in a Superflex league, you can feel pretty safe about any pick from the 110 and higher. I think right now is a fair cutoff.
I would put that caveat. Where have you been seeing Cam Akers go in these NFL mock drafts? Because I'm kind of worried about him not having the draft capital. Because I could see him kind of falling out to be still the 5th running back, but not being necessarily in the same tier of the other 4 guys.
Yeah, let me look and see where the consensus is on Cam Akers. Because I can see that. And what I was going to mention was there are potentially, in this mock draft, they have him going to Tampa Bay at pick 76.
Okay.
So that's high 3rd round draft capital if he went to pick 76 to Tampa Bay. We're talking about the top half of the 3rd round. So you're still getting day 2 draft capital. But, I guess you could say for Clyde Edwards-Helaire and for, Cam Akers, if they fell to outside of day 2, then maybe you push them down a tier.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the same thing is going to be the case with how we're looking at running backs in Dynasty. I think it's going to end up being the same case for these guys in the real NFL draft. They're actually going to get pushed up because there's not as many available as teams thought there would be coming into the year. So let's just put a caveat that maybe those guys are out of the tier if their draft capital completely tanks. But for now, I think it's fair to just predict that that's where they're going to be based on scarcity.
Oh, okay, that's fair. So what are we looking at outside those top 10?
Okay, so outside the top 10, I think that's when you're looking at, where are some of the other skill players going to be drafted? Because, like, for instance, that the average spot for Henry Ruggs is pick 18. Now, whether you're a Henry Ruggs fan or not, that sounds a whole lot like John Ross, or that sounds a whole lot like Marquise Brown, where essentially he's just going to be a speed burner that has first round draft capital. So there's going to be people that consider him to be in the top tier, or at least that high second tier of receivers. So if that's the case, and that seems to be what the consensus is, then you would say that extends the tier back at least one more slot. You know what I mean? Just because there's going to be someone that's willing to trade for, that pick. And then, if you look at just day 2, a lot of receivers are being mocked to go day 2, and that's going to put them, right in that range where they're potential to be picked, in the late first round of a Superflex draft as well. So this one has T. Higgins going number 33 to Cincinnati. So if that was the case, that's going to put him right there in that first round range as well.
Yeah.
Jalen Rhaegar is another one that a lot of people have going in the top half of the 2nd round. That would be another guy that a lot of people like him already heading into it. And if he gets that draft capital, it's going to be very similar to like Deebo Samuel or A.J. Brown range from last year. Same kind of thing. Early to mid 2nd round is going to be warranting of a first round pick in Dynasty. Justin Jefferson, same thing. Another guy that's going to fit right into that range. Michael Pittman. A couple other names that kind of can creep in there. You could have like Brandon Ayuk could be another one that jumps in there. But then some other guys that may go outside of that jump into, the 3rd round of the draft. But I would be fair to say that there's going to be maybe 5 receivers that go in the top 50 picks.
I think that's a very that's not an aggressive estimate at all either. I've seen 5 wide receivers go in the first round of some mocks.
No, I have too. And so I'm thinking 5 to 7 probably that go in the top 2 rounds. But depending on where they go, in the high second round, if someone goes to a really good landing spot at the beginning of the second round, that's like where Deebo Samuel went last year.
Yeah.
And, that type of draft capital would make me push that player up, like a Justin Jefferson, if he went in a range like that. It would have me extend that tier. So look at it like this. You have the top 2 receivers, and then you have essentially potentially 5 more picks of guys that could go late day 1, early day 2 at the receiver position that could extend that tier potentially 4 or 5 slots. Then you have like KJ Hamler, Colin Johnson. Those guys could go round 3, round 4, and then that may be extending your tier just a little bit. But I think it's fair to say up to 7 receivers go in the top half of the second round or higher. So I would feel comfortable extending that tier out 5 more slots. So we'd be at the 203 right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then also Jordan Love I saw being mocked to go really high, and that could be like a Daniel Jones or Josh Allen situation where nobody really is on him in fantasy football. Like I never hear anybody in Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast talking about him. But if that's the guy and some NFL team loves and takes in the first half of the first round, I think it would be stupid to overlook him like we did with Daniel Jones and Josh Allen.
Yeah, I was just going to get to quarterbacks, so thanks for you urged right into it. Jordan Love, Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm. I think all of them could go in the top 50 picks.
Oh, really?
So, yep. This one has Jacob Eason or Jake Fromm actually going at pick number. Sorry, that's not great video to be pausing, but this one has Jake Fromm going at pick number 37 to the Chargers. So that's the 5th pick of day 2.
Yeah,
so
that's higher than Drew Lock went.
Yeah, and if that were to happen, that kind of spells immediate potential playing time.
Mm-hmm.
So that is very similar to like what we saw with Drew Lock, but he's going to have immediate playing time. So, that could be a guy that definitely goes higher. And I think I've said it on a couple videos before. People are going to learn from Daniel Jones, Josh Allen, and Drew Lock. They're not going to let these guys consistently fall to the middle of the second round in Superflex, especially if you get to this range of the draft, which I think this is good that we're doing this tier video because let's say Jordan Love, Jake Fromm, Jacob Eason all go in the top 50. That extends our 2.03 to 2.06.
Yeah.
3 more spots. And so, we had the 110 breakout, right? We had the top 10, and we've extended that all the way to 206. And we've extended that with receivers, and we've extended that with quarterbacks, all with day 1 or early day 2 draft capital. So my advice would be if you're sitting in this range, if you have a bunch of late first, early second round picks, you need to look at your roster and determine, okay, I'm probably sitting in a range with these picks where there's not going to be a running back that's going to be available to take unless I'm reaching. And so I better be prepared to say I'm going to take best player available. And I'm going to be picking between, if you're stuck at the 112, you may be stuck in a spot where you have 4 day 1 or late or early day 2 receivers that you have to pick from, and you have to pick the right one.
Yeah.
You could pick Marquise Brown, or you could pick Deebo Samuel, or you could pick Paris Campbell, or you could pick JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
Yeah.
And look at the variables of how they performed last year. And so, do you want to be stuck picking at the beginning of those tiers? I would say you'd probably agree. You'd rather pick at the end of the tier and just take whoever lands to you, unless it's a guy you absolutely love. You know what I mean?
100%. And also, if it would be an option, I would love to package, like if you had 2 of those picks, like say you have like the 112 and the 212, I would like to package my entire draft to get into that top 5. That way I could have the option of taking a running back or an elite wide receiver.
Yeah, and this is kind of what we talked about with the last video too. When you're in this range, if you're sitting in your league and you're sitting with a couple of these picks, let's say you're sitting with the 112 and the 204, you may be at a point where you may be able just to take a shot at 2 quarterbacks or 2 receivers or a quarterback and receiver. But understand that this is probably where the value is going to be, those 2 positions. So if you're sitting there going, man, I was hoping this running back class was going to be deep, I'm going to add a couple running backs. This is where you may want to consider either doing what Mason said and packaging up and seeing if you can maybe get into the 108 or the 107. That gives you a shot at getting one of the running backs. And if you can't do that, maybe shop these picks. Don't shop them right now, but maybe throw it out there and kind of knowing this is what the tiers are going to look like. See what teams may be interested now and see if you get any bites on potential running backs. Don't necessarily make the trade today, but get an idea of who's available, because there may be, a running back that you can swamp for another team that's looking at one of these receivers. Let's say they see Henry Ruggs goes 15th overall pick and they have him in their first round and he falls to like the 202. There may be somebody that's willing to trade you, a top 15, top 16 running back. You may be able to trade a Melvin Gordon and for Henry Ruggs.
Yeah.
Or, insert
or James
whatever
Conner.
name insert whatever name you want in there. But that's kind of my strategy, because I have a lot of teams that are stuck with a ton of these, late first, early second round picks. And yeah, I would love to add a couple receivers, but I also understand, I could hit a 50-50 shot on one of these receivers not being a huge value riser. I could get a N'Keal Harry or Paris Campbell or J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, where I'm basically just stuck holding an asset that does nothing in year one. And landing spot might not even help. A lot of people didn't want A.J. Brown because of that. It wasn't a good landing spot for him. And you see where that's happened. So I think that's kind of where I'm looking at it. From 111 to 206, I think you're going to get great value. This is a really strong class. You're going to get a quarterback or you're going to get a receiver with really good draft capital. But just understand, if that's not what you need on your team, if you need a tight end or you need a running back, there's a really good chance that position is not going to be available for you in that range.